2 days had passed since Jinwoo arrived in the detention cells. He had barely spoken to anyone. He ate his food, drank his water, and sat quietly in his corner. The other prisoners had stopped trying to talk to him. Only Hana still watched him constantly, though she stayed silent as he had asked. On the third morning, everything changed. Commander Rathkor sat in his command chair, reviewing the daily reports. The war was going well for the Velkari. They had captured 3 more human colonies in the past month. The humans fought hard, but they were no match for superior Velkari technology and strength. "Commander," Vestar said, approaching with a data tablet, "I've completed the standard processing on all new prisoners. Background checks, identity verification, that sort of thing." Rathkor waved a clawed hand dismissively. "Just file the reports, unless you found something interesting?" Vestar hesitated. "Well, sir, there's something strange about the human we captured. The computer took a very long time to identify him. Much longer than normal. Why?" Rathkor was only half paying attention. "I don't know, sir. The system had to access military archives from multiple sectors. Deep archives. Some of them were coded at very high security levels." Now Rathkor looked up. His yellow eyes focused on the younger officer. "Show me." Vestar tapped the tablet. A holographic display appeared in the air between them. It showed Jinwoo's face, a 3-dimensional image that rotated slowly. Below the image, text began to scroll, slowly at first, then faster. Rathkor leaned forward. He began to read. His eyes grew wider with each line. Subject, Jinwoo Kim. Species human, age, 32 standard years. Height, 1.75 meters. Weight, 75 kilograms, normal information. Nothing unusual. Rathkor kept reading. Military classification, active service. Rank lieutenant. Unit 5th Reconnaissance Division. Status, sole survivor. Rathkor's scales began to prickle. Sole survivor was never a good sign. He read faster. Combat history, Arcturus 7 campaign. Proxima Station defense. Battle of Crying Stars. Sigma outpost raid, the siege of... The list went on and on. Dozens of battles. Dozens of major engagements. Rathkor felt a cold feeling growing in his chest. Then he reached the next section. His blood turned to ice. Threat assessment. Omega level. Extreme danger. Subject is responsible for approximately 47,394 confirmed enemy casualties. Known alias the Reaper. The tablet slipped from Vestar's hands. It clattered on the metal floor. Both officers stared at the holographic display in shocked silence. Recommended action. Rathkor read aloud. His voice barely a whisper now. Do not engage at close range. Do not attempt capture. Eliminate on sight from maximum distance. If subject is somehow contained, execute immediately. Do not transport. Do not interrogate. Do not... He couldn't finish reading. His hands were shaking. The Reaper. They had the Reaper on their ship. Every soldier in this part of space knew that name. It was whispered in barracks late at night. It was the nightmare that made veteran warriors check their shadows. The Reaper was the reason some Velkari soldiers refused to fight near human territory. How? Rathkor said slowly. Did we not know this when we captured him? His ship had no identification codes, sir, Vestar said. His voice was high and frightened. It was completely stripped. And he wasn't carrying any identity markers. The facial recognition system had to search through billions of records before finding a match. Rathkor stood up so fast his chair fell backward. Sound the alert now. Lock down the detention level. I want 50 soldiers down there immediately. Full armor, heavy weapons. Seal every corridor leading to that cell block. Alarms began to wail throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in every corridor. Soldiers ran to their positions grabbing weapons and armor. Most of them didn't know what the emergency was yet. They would find out soon enough. In his private office, Officer Sekthar was eating his midday meal when the alarm sounded. He dropped his food and ran for the armory. As the chief detention officer, he needed to know what was happening. Was there a riot? An escape attempt? He reached the command center and saw Rathkor's face on a monitor. The commander looked terrified. Sekthar had never seen Rathkor look scared before. Sir, what's happening? Sekthar asked. You, Rathkor said, pointing at him through the screen. You put a prisoner in cell 47 3 days ago. A human male? Yes, sir. Just a scout we found drifting. Nothing special? Nothing special. Rathkor's voice rose to a roar. You put the Reaper in a standard cell. The Reaper! Do you understand what you've done? The blood drained from Sekthar's face. He had heard the stories too. Everyone had. The human who fought alone against entire armies. The soldier who turned a mining colony into a graveyard for 12,000 Velkari troops. The monster who sent back 49 bodies and one insane survivor. He was just lying there, Sekthar whispered. He didn't fight. He didn't resist. He looked so normal. That's what makes him dangerous, Rathkor said. Get down to detention level now. I want visual confirmation that he's still in his cell. I want every guard on that level armed and ready. Go, Sekthar ran. His hearts were pounding in his chest. All three of them. He grabbed a rifle from the armory as he passed. His hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped it. The detention level looked the same as always. Prisoners behind barriers. Guards at their posts. Nothing seemed wrong. Sekthar felt a small hope growing. Maybe the human was still secure. Maybe everything would be fine. He walked slowly toward cell block 7. Other guards joined him, all carrying heavy weapons. They moved carefully, watching every shadow. The prisoners sensed something was wrong. They had grown quiet, watching the guards with nervous eyes. Cell 47 came into view. Sekthar raised his rifle, pointing it at the cell. Through the red glow of the energy barrier, he could see the human. Jinwoo was sitting in his usual spot, back against the wall, eyes closed. He looked like he was sleeping. He looked harmless. He's still there, Commander, Sekthar said into his communication device. He hasn't moved. He's just sitting there. Through the device, he heard Rathkor let out a breath he had been holding. Good, very good. Now listen carefully. We're going to transfer him to the maximum security prison on Velkar Prime. But we need to do this right. I'm sending Dr. Keshava down with enough sedative to drop a Gorvathi battle beast. We're going to put him completely unconscious, bind him with triple restraints, and move him under heavy guard. Yes, sir. When? In 1 hour. I want 50 soldiers ready. Full combat armor, energy shields, everything, and Sekthar. Yes, Commander? If anything goes wrong, if he wakes up, if he resists at all, don't try to capture him. Just kill him. We'll deal with the political problems later. Understood? Understood, sir. Sekthar lowered his rifle slightly. He looked at the human again. Jinwoo still hadn't moved. He looked so small, so weak. It was hard to believe this was the Reaper. Hard to believe this ordinary-looking man had killed so many. But the stories were real. Sekthar had talked to survivors. He had seen the battle reports. The humans might be weak individually, but this one had learned to turn that weakness into a weapon. He used tricks, traps, and tactics that no honorable Velkari warrior would ever consider. Humans didn't fight fair, and the Reaper was the worst of them all. Across the corridor, in her cell, Hana had heard everything. Her ears had always been sharp. She saw the guards gathering, saw their fear. She knew they had finally figured out who Jinwoo was. She looked at him. His eyes were still closed, but she knew he was awake. She had watched him for 3 days. She knew when he was really sleeping and when he was just pretending. Right now he was listening to everything, watching through barely opened eyelids. Planning. Hana pressed herself against the back wall of her cell. She didn't know what was going to happen, but she knew one thing for certain. The Velkari thought they were ready. They thought 50 soldiers and heavy weapons would be enough. They thought wrong. The Reaper was about to show them exactly how wrong they were. The alarm bells rang through the Velkari warship. Commander Rathkor lifted his massive scaled head from the tactical display. His yellow eyes narrowed as he watched the screen. A small vessel drifted in the darkness of space, damaged and leaking air. Report, Rathkor said. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. Sir, we detected the vessel 3 hours ago, said Officer Vestar. He was younger than the commander, with bright green scales that marked him as a junior officer. It's a human scout ship. Life support is failing. We can retrieve it easily. Rathkor felt a small surge of satisfaction. Humans were still new to this part of space. They were weak creatures, soft-skinned and fragile. Capturing one might provide useful information about their military positions. Bring it in, he ordered. Carefully. I want whoever is inside alive. The warship's tractor beam reached out like an invisible hand. It grabbed the small human vessel and pulled it into the massive hangar bay. Rathkor walked down to the hangar himself. He wanted to see this human with his own eyes. The hangar was cold and smelled of metal and fuel. A dozen Velkari soldiers stood ready with their weapons pointed at the small ship. They wore dark armor that covered their reptilian bodies. Their rifles hummed with contained energy. The door of the human ship opened with a hiss of escaping air. Smoke poured out. The soldiers tensed, ready for anything, but nothing happened. No attack came. No desperate fight. After a moment, 2 soldiers entered the ship. They came back carrying something between them. It was a human male, unconscious. He wore a torn military jacket over simple clothes. His dark hair was messy and stuck to his forehead with sweat. He looked ordinary. Disappointingly ordinary. "Is this all?" Rathkor asked. His voice showed his disappointment clearly. "Yes, Commander," said Sekthar, the lead soldier. "Just one human, nothing special. His ship had no weapons, no valuable cargo. He was probably just a scout or messenger." Rathkor stared at the unconscious human. He had hoped for an officer, maybe even a captain, someone who knew important secrets. This looked like just another lost soldier. "Take him to the detention level," Rathkor said with a wave of his clawed hand. "Cell block 7. Put him with the other prisoners. Maybe he'll be useful for something." The soldiers dragged the human away. His feet scraped against the metal floor. Rathkor watched him go, then turned back to his command duties. He had more important things to worry about than one insignificant human. The detention level was deep in the ship's belly. It was a dark place, lit only by dim red lights. The air was thick and hot, uncomfortable for most species. The Velkari liked it that way. Uncomfortable prisoners were easier to break. Sekthar and his team carried the human through the corridors. Other prisoners watched from behind energy barriers. There were many different species here. Some looked like insects, others like plants. A few were mammals, like the human, with fur or bare skin. They threw the human into cell number 47. He hit the floor hard and lay still. The energy barrier hummed to life, creating an invisible wall that would burn anyone who touched it. "Another weak one," Sekthar said to the other guards. They laughed as they walked away. Inside the cell, the human lay motionless for several minutes. Then his eyes opened slowly. He looked around without moving his head much. He was checking his surroundings, looking for threats and opportunities. But he did it carefully, quietly. In the cell across from him, someone gasped. It was a small sound, quickly cut off. The human turned his head slightly. He saw another human there, a woman. She looked like she had been a prisoner for a long time. Her clothes were dirty and torn. Her face was thin from hunger, but her eyes were sharp and alert. She stared at him with wide eyes. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. She looked like she had seen a ghost. The human male sat up slowly. He touched his ribs carefully, checking for broken bones. He seemed to find nothing serious. Then he looked at the woman again and put one finger to his lips, a clear message. "Be quiet." She nodded quickly, but her hands were shaking. She pressed herself against the back wall of her cell, as far from the barrier as possible. Other prisoners in nearby cells watched the exchange. They were curious about the new arrival. Most new prisoners cried or shouted or tried to escape. This one just sat quietly, looking around with calm, dark eyes. "Hey, human," someone called out. It was a large creature with 4 arms and gray skin. "You're wasting your time staying quiet. They'll break you eventually. They break everyone." The human looked at the creature but said nothing. He just studied him for a moment, then looked away. "Not very friendly, is he?" said another voice. This one belonged to something that looked like a walking tree. Maybe he's in shock. The weak ones usually are. The human ignored them all. He moved to the corner of his cell and sat down with his back against the wall. From there, he could see both the corridor and the other cells. A defensive position. Smart. Hours passed. Guards came and went. They brought food that looked like gray paste. Most prisoners ate it hungrily. The human ate too, but slowly. He watched everything. The guard routines, The patrol patterns. The way the energy barriers flickered slightly every few minutes. The woman across from him barely touched her food. She kept staring at him. Several times she opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, but then closed it again. Fear and disbelief fought in her eyes. Finally, after the guards had passed for the third time, the human spoke. His voice was quiet but clear. "How long have you been here?" he asked the woman. She jumped at the sound of his voice. Then she swallowed hard. 4 months, she whispered. Maybe 5. I stopped counting. Your name? Hannah, she said. Her voice was shaking. I know who you are. The human's expression didn't change. No, you don't. Yes, I do, Hannah insisted. She leaned forward, closer to her barrier. I saw your picture. In the briefings, before I was captured. You're careful, the human said softly. But there was something in his voice. Not a threat exactly, but a warning. Names have power here. Hannah pressed her lips together. She nodded slowly. But the look in her eyes had changed. The hopelessness was gone. Now there was something else. Something that looked almost like hope. The human leaned his head back against the wall. He closed his eyes, but Hannah could tell he wasn't sleeping. He was thinking, planning. In the command center far above, Commander Rathkor was reviewing reports. He had already forgotten about the human prisoner. There were battles to plan, territories to conquer, enemies to crush. One captured human meant nothing. But deep in the detention level, in cell 47, Jinwoo was counting the seconds between guard patrols. He was mapping the ship in his mind, remembering every corridor he had been dragged through. He was noting the smell of fuel in the air, the vibration of the engines through the walls, the slight echo that suggested large empty spaces nearby. They thought they had captured a man. They thought he was just another prisoner. They had no idea what was coming, not yet. In the command center, Rathkor gathered his senior officers around a large table. The holographic display showed Jinwoo's file, floating in the air above them. Images of destroyed bases and battle reports scrolled past. The numbers were staggering. The death toll was unbelievable. How is this possible? Asked Commander Telvan, the ship's second officer. She was older than Rathkor, with dark blue scales that showed her age and experience. One human, just one? These numbers must be wrong. They're not wrong, said Vestar quietly. He pulled up another file. I've verified everything. Multiple sources. Multiple witnesses. It's all real. The officers fell silent. They watched the images change. Burning buildings, destroyed vehicles, empty battlefields where thousands of soldiers should have been. Let me tell you what I've learned, Rathkor said. His voice was grave. 10 years ago, the humans first came to this part of space. We thought they were weak, soft, easy to conquer. We were right about most of them. He paused, tapping the display. Jinwoo's face appeared younger, in a military uniform. He was smiling in the picture. He looked happy. This was Jinwoo Kim at age 22. A fresh soldier in the human military. Nothing special. Average test scores. Average physical abilities. He was assigned to the 5th Reconnaissance Division. A simple scouting unit. 20 soldiers total. Rathkor changed the image. Now it showed a planet red and dusty. Arcturus 7. A mining colony. We invaded it with 12,000 troops. The human military sent the 5th Reconnaissance Division to scout our positions. They were supposed to report back and retreat. They never got the chance. What happened? Telvan asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. We ambushed them, Rathkor said. Killed 19 of them in the first attack. Only one escaped into the mining tunnels. Jinwoo Kim. We sent patrols after him. They never came back. We sent search teams. They disappeared. One by one, our soldiers started dying. The room was completely quiet now. Every officer was listening. At first, we thought there was a large human force hiding on the planet. But our sensors showed nothing. Just one human life sign moving through the tunnels. So we sent more soldiers, and more. They kept dying. Rathkor's voice dropped lower. After 3 weeks, our troops started refusing to go into certain areas. They said the tunnels were haunted. They said a ghost was hunting them. Some soldiers went mad. They claimed they could hear breathing in the darkness, but when they turned around, nothing was there. How many did we lose? Someone asked. In 3 months? Rathkor looked at the numbers. 843 soldiers gone. Bodies found everywhere. Some shot, some stabbed, some killed with their own weapons. Some crushed in cave-ins, some poisoned. Every death was different. Every trap was unique, and the human? Telvan whispered. This Jinwu? He lived in those tunnels for 3 months. He ate our rations, drank our water, wore our armor when his clothes wore out. He turned that entire planet into his hunting ground. Finally, our commander ordered a complete withdrawal. 12,000 soldiers came to conquer Arcturus 7. Only 11,157 left alive, all because of one human. The officers stared at the display in horror, but Rathkor wasn't finished. That was just the beginning, he said. Next came Proxima Station, a major human outpost. We laid siege to it with 30,000 troops. The humans had only 5,000 defenders. The battle should have lasted a week at most. He pulled up another image, a massive space station torn and burning. Jinwu was one of the defenders. When we finally broke through the outer walls, he volunteered for a suicide mission. He took a small strike team behind our lines. Their orders were to sabotage our supply depot and retreat if possible. Let me guess, Telvan said. They didn't retreat. His team died in the first hour. All of them except Jinwu. But he didn't retreat either. For 5 days, he moved through our rear positions. He destroyed supply ships. He poisoned water supplies. He planted bombs on ammunition stores. He sent false radio signals that made our units fire on each other. Rathkor paused, letting that sink in. By the time we realized what was happening, we had lost so many supplies that we couldn't continue the siege. We had to withdraw. 30,000 soldiers defeated by one man who wouldn't quit. Why do they call him the Reaper? Asked another officer. Because of what happened at the Battle of Crying Stars, Rathkor said quietly. He changed the image again. This time it showed a small ship in space surrounded by debris, a major fleet engagement. 60 ships on each side. The battle lasted 3 days. By the end, both fleets were nearly destroyed. Only a few ships from each side limped away, and Jinwu? His ship was hit early in the battle. Life support failed. Communications failed. Everyone assumed he was dead, but his ship kept drifting through the battlefield and he kept fighting. He used whatever weapons still worked. He fired torpedoes at damaged enemy ships. He even used his ship's tractor beam to pull wreckage into enemy flight paths. Rathkor's voice grew softer. When the battle ended, his ship was found drifting among thousands of dead vessels. The rescue team thought it was just another piece of wreckage. Then they saw movement inside. Jinwu had survived for 3 days with no life support, in freezing temperatures with barely any air. He was the only survivor from either fleet in his section of space. Impossible, someone muttered. That's what I thought, Rathkor said. So I checked with medical experts. They said humans have something called the will to live. When their bodies should shut down, when they should die, sometimes they just don't. They force themselves to keep going. No other species can do this like humans can. He closed the files and looked at his officers. Now you understand. This isn't just a soldier. This is humanity's apex predator. He's killed nearly 50,000 of us, and he did it by never giving up, never surrendering, never accepting defeat. What's our plan? Telvan asked. We sedate him heavily. We bind him with the strongest restraints we have. We move him under heavy guard to a shuttle, then transfer him to the maximum security prison on Velkar Prime. Once there, he becomes someone else's problem. And if something goes wrong? Rathkor's eyes were hard. Then we kill him, immediately, no hesitation. We don't try to recapture him. We don't try to stop him. We just kill him and accept whatever political consequences come from it. In the detention level, time was passing slowly. Guards stood at every corridor junction, their weapons ready. Dr. Keshava had arrived with a large case full of sedatives. She was a medical officer, tall and thin, with light green scales and careful hands. This will put him unconscious for at least 12 hours, she said, holding up a large syringe. The liquid inside was milky white. I've tripled the normal human dosage. He won't feel a thing, Sekthar nodded. Good, stay behind the other guards. Once he's unconscious, we'll go in and secure him. 50 soldiers now filled the detention level. They wore full combat armor, thick plates of dark metal that covered every inch of their bodies. They carried heavy rifles that could punch through starship hulls. Energy shields flickered around them, ready to absorb incoming fire. All of this for one small human who sat quietly in his cell. Hana watched from across the corridor. She wanted to warn Jinwoo, wanted to scream that they were coming, but he already knew. She could tell by the way he sat. His muscles were relaxed, but his eyes were alert. He was ready. The soldiers began to move forward. They surrounded Cell 47, weapons pointed at the energy barrier. Dr. Keshava stood behind them, protected by a wall of armored bodies. "Lower the barrier," Sekthar commanded. An operator pressed a button. The red energy field flickered and died. The cell was open. Jinwoo didn't move. He sat perfectly still, watching them with dark, calm eyes. "Human," Sekthar called out. "You will stand slowly. You will place your hands behind your head. You will follow all commands. If you resist, we will kill you. Do you understand?" Jinwoo stood up. He was slow about it, careful. He put his hands behind his head, fingers interlaced. He looked at the 50 soldiers and their weapons. He looked at the armor and the shields. Then he looked at Sekthar and smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret. Someone who had already won and was just waiting for everyone else to realize it. That smile made Sekthar's blood run cold. "Move forward slowly," Sekthar ordered. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. "Any sudden movement and we fire." Jinwoo walked forward with his hands still behind his head. He moved at an easy pace, like he was taking a walk in a park. 20 soldiers surrounded him immediately, their weapons never leaving him. Dr. Keshava stepped forward with the syringe. "This will only hurt for a moment," she said, trying to sound professional. But her hands were shaking too. She pressed the syringe against Jinwoo's neck. The needle went in. She pushed the plunger. The milky white liquid disappeared into his bloodstream, enough sedative to drop a creature 3 times his size. Jinwoo didn't even flinch. He just kept looking at Sekthar with that small smile. "How long until it works?" Sekthar asked. 30 seconds, Dr. Keshava said, stepping back quickly. "Maybe less." "The dosage is very high," they waited. 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30. Jinwoo was still standing, still smiling. His eyes were just as clear and alert as before. "Why isn't he falling?" Sekthar demanded. "He should be unconscious by now." Dr. Keshava pulled out a scanner and pointed it at Jinwoo. Her eyes went wide. "The sedative? It's in his blood, but it's not working properly. His metabolism is burning through it too fast. Or his body chemistry is different than our research suggested. I don't understand." "Give him more," Sekthar ordered. "I can't. That much would kill him." "Then we have a problem," Jinwoo said quietly. These were the first words he had spoken since the soldiers arrived. Everything happened at once. Jinwoo's hands came down from behind his head. But they weren't empty. He had been working on the metal plate in the corner of his cell for 3 days, slowly, quietly. He had loosened a piece of metal the size of his palm. Sharp, heavy, perfect. He threw it at the nearest soldier's face. It spun through the air and struck the small gap between the helmet and body armor. The soldier screamed and fell backward, crashing into 2 others. Jinwoo moved forward into the confusion. He wasn't trying to fight all 50 soldiers. That would be stupid. He was doing something much smarter. He was getting close to them, so close that they couldn't shoot without hitting each other. He grabbed the rifle from the falling soldier. He reversed it and slammed the stock into another soldier's knee. The joint broke with a crack. That soldier fell. Jinwoo took his rifle too. Now he had 2 rifles. He fired both at the ceiling directly above them. The energy bolts tore through metal and exposed power conduits. Electricity arced down. Soldiers jumped backward to avoid it. More confusion. More chaos. Fire, fire! Sekthar was screaming, but the soldiers couldn't get a clear shot. Jinwoo was always behind someone, always moving, always using the Velkari soldiers as shields. He dropped the rifles and dove forward, sliding between the legs of a large soldier. He came up behind the soldier and pushed him hard. The soldier stumbled forward into 3 others. They all went down in a crash of armor. Jinwoo ran. Not toward the exit, they would expect that. He ran deeper into the detention level, toward the maintenance tunnels he had been watching for 3 days. "Don't let him escape," Sekthar roared. Soldiers ran after him, firing wildly. Energy bolts scorched the walls and ceiling. One hit an energy barrier, and the prisoner inside screamed as the feedback shocked him. Jinwoo reached the maintenance tunnel access. It was a small door, locked. He had watched the guards use it. He had memorized the code. His fingers flew over the keypad. The door opened. He dove through just as a dozen energy bolts struck where he had been standing. Inside the maintenance tunnel, it was dark and cramped. Perfect. Large Velkari soldiers in heavy armor couldn't move well in here. But Jinwoo was smaller, lighter, faster. He crawled through the tunnel at speed. Behind him, he could hear the soldiers trying to follow. They were too slow. Their armor scraped against the walls. They couldn't fit through some of the turns. Jinwoo reached a junction. He could go up, down, left, or right. He had studied the ship's layout in his mind, building a map from vibrations and sounds. He went up, climbing a ladder built for Velkari hands. It was awkward for human hands, but he made it work. The ladder led to a service level. This area was full of pipes and cables, the guts of the ship. A few maintenance workers were here. They looked up in surprise as a human emerged from the access tunnel. Jinwoo didn't hurt them. They weren't soldiers. They weren't armed. He just ran past them. Their shouts would alert the guards, but that was fine. He was already planning 3 steps ahead. In the command center, alarms were ringing. Red lights flashed. Rathkor stood at his command console, watching feeds from security cameras. He saw Jinwoo running through the service level. How did this happen? He roared at the screen. 50 soldiers, 50. And he got past them. Commander, he's heading towards Sector 7, reported a tracking officer. That's near the primary reactor. Lock down that sector. Now, I want every soldier on this ship hunting him. Sir, should we? Shoot him on sight, Rathkor commanded. I don't care about the political mess anymore. I want him dead. Throughout the ship, soldiers ran to their positions. Blast doors slammed shut, dividing the ship into sections. Security teams moved in squads, checking every corridor, every room. But Jinwoo was already where he needed to be. He had found what he was looking for, a supply closet. Inside were cleaning chemicals, maintenance tools, and spare parts. To most people, it was just junk. To Jinwoo, it was an armory. He worked quickly. He mixed 2 chemicals together in a container. The mixture began to smoke. He wrapped it in a cloth and sealed it. A crude bomb, but it would work. He made 3 more using different chemicals for each one. Next, he took apart a welding torch. He removed the fuel canister and the igniter. Combined with some wire, he now had a triggering device. 6 minutes of work. That was all it took to turn cleaning supplies into weapons. He heard soldiers approaching. Heavy boots on metal floors. He slipped out of the closet and moved to the ventilation shaft. These were too small for adult Velkari, but humans were smaller. He climbed inside and replaced the grate behind him. The soldiers burst into the area 10 seconds later. They found the open supply closet, the missing chemicals. But no human. He was here, one soldier said. Where did he go? Check everywhere, the squad leader ordered. He can't have gone far, but Jinwoo was already far. He was crawling through the ventilation system, moving toward the heart of the ship, toward the reactor, toward the one place that could destroy this entire vessel if damaged correctly. Back in the detention level, Hana sat in her cell. The energy barrier was back up. The guards were gone, all called away to hunt Jinwoo. The other prisoners were talking excitedly. Did you see that? The 4-armed creature said. He took down 5 soldiers in seconds. I told you he wasn't normal, said another prisoner. That's no ordinary human. Hana said nothing. She just waited. Because she knew something they didn't. She had been a soldier too before her capture. She had studied the tactics of the 5th Reconnaissance Division. She knew how they thought, how they fought. Jinwoo wasn't trying to escape. Not yet. He was doing something else first. He was making sure the Velkari would never forget what happened when they captured the Reaper. In the ventilation shaft, Jinwoo reached a junction. Through the grate below, he could see it, the primary reactor chamber. Massive and glowing with contained power. It was heavily shielded, heavily protected. Impossible to damage from the outside. But every reactor needed cooling, and cooling systems needed maintenance access. And maintenance access meant vulnerable points. Jinwoo studied the chamber for 3 minutes. He counted the guards, 6. He noted the patrol pattern, every 2 minutes. He found the cooling system controls, left side, near a support pillar. He pulled out one of his crude bombs and attached the triggering device. Then he opened the grate very quietly. He tied a wire to it and lowered it down slowly, carefully. It hung just above the cooling system controls, invisible from the guards' positions. He set the timer for 20 minutes. Then he climbed back up the ventilation shaft, replacing the grate behind him. 20 minutes. Enough time to do one more thing. He had to get to the communication center. He had a message to send, a warning that would give innocent people time to escape, because Jinwoo Kim was the Reaper. He was a soldier. He killed enemies, but he didn't murder people who couldn't fight back. That was the difference between him and them. He crawled through the ventilation system, heading toward the communication center. The timer was ticking down. The ship's fate was already sealed. Now he just had to make sure everyone who wanted to live had the chance to do so. Behind him, dozens of soldiers were searching, but they were looking in all the wrong places. Because humans didn't think like Velkari. They didn't fight with honor or follow predictable patterns. They adapted. They improvised. They won by being smarter, not stronger. And right now, Jinwoo was the smartest person on this ship. Jinwoo reached the communication center by climbing through the ventilation system. Through the grate, he could see two operators sitting at their consoles. They looked bored. They had no idea what was about to happen. He waited until they were both facing away from the vent. Then he quietly removed the grate, dropped down, and was behind them before they could react. A quick strike to the pressure points on their necks, and both collapsed unconscious. Not dead, just sleeping. He sat at the communication console and began working. His fingers moved fast across the controls. The Velkari system was different from human systems, but he had studied captured equipment during the war. He knew enough. He accessed the ship-wide announcement system. Then he activated it. "Attention all personnel," Jinwoo said, his voice echoing through every corridor of the massive warship. "This is Lieutenant Jinwoo Kim of the Human Defense Force. In 18 minutes, this ship will suffer a catastrophic reactor failure. I recommend that all non-essential personnel proceed to the escape pods immediately." This is not a request. This is a warning. In the command center, Rathkor's face went pale. "He's bluffing," he said, but his voice lacked confidence. "He can't possibly damage the reactor." "It's too well protected, Commander," said the chief engineer, checking his displays. "I'm detecting unusual readings from cooling system 3. Something's wrong." "Show me." The engineer pulled up a camera feed from the reactor chamber. Everything looked normal. Guards stood at their posts. The reactor hummed with contained power. "I don't see anything wrong," Rathkor said. "The sensors do, sir. Temperature is rising in Sector 7B. Not much, but it's climbing." Rathkor stared at the display. Was the human telling the truth? Could he really have sabotaged the reactor in the few minutes since his escape? "Check the cooling system manually," he ordered. "Send a team now." But even as he gave the order, he knew it was too late. If the human had done something to the reactor, if there really was a bomb or a sabotage, 18 minutes wasn't enough time to fix it. "All hands," Rathkor said slowly. "Begin evacuation procedures. Non-essential personnel to the escape pods." "Sir, are you sure?" Telvin asked. If it's a trick, we look foolish. If it's real and we don't evacuate, hundreds of soldiers die." Rathkor's voice was heavy with defeat. "I won't risk my crew on the hope that he's lying. Not when it's the Reaper." Throughout the ship, soldiers began moving toward the escape pods. They didn't run. They were trained better than that, but they moved quickly. Officers shouted orders. Maintenance workers grabbed emergency supplies. In the detention level, the energy barriers suddenly dropped. "All prisoners proceed to escape pod bay 4, a voice announced. "You have 15 minutes. The prisoners stared at each other in confusion. Then they ran. They didn't ask questions. They just ran toward freedom. Hana ran too, but she kept looking over her shoulder. Where was Jinwoo? Was he going to escape too, or was he planning something else? She got her answer when she reached escape pod bay 4. Jinwoo was standing there, checking each pod as prisoners climbed in. He was making sure everyone got safely aboard. He was counting heads, directing traffic, helping those who were injured or weak. When Hana reached him, he looked at her. "Get in pod 7, he said. "It has extra supplies. You'll need them." "What about you?" she asked. "I'll be right behind you." Hana knew that was a lie. She could see it in his eyes. But she also knew that arguing with him wouldn't help. She climbed into the pod. 37 prisoners made it to the escape pods. Jinwoo sealed each pod personally and pressed the launch button. They shot away from the warship like seeds from a plant, spreading out into space. Each had a distress beacon. Each had enough supplies to last a week. They would be rescued. Then Jinwoo turned and ran. Not toward an escape pod. He ran toward the hangar bay where they had first brought his captured ship. In the command center, Rathkor watched the countdown. 12 minutes. The evacuation was going well. Most of his crew was already in the pods. The prisoners were away. Soon he would give the order to abandon ship entirely. "Sir, the human is heading to Hangar Bay 3, reported a tracking officer. His ship, Rathkor realized. He's going for his ship. He almost laughed. After all this, after destroying a warship worth millions, the human just wanted his own ship back. "Let him go," Rathkor said. "Everyone else evacuate. We're done here." Jinwoo reached the hangar bay with 10 minutes to spare. His ship was still there, exactly where they had left it. The Velkari hadn't bothered to study it much. It was just a damaged human scout vessel. Nothing special, but it was his. And it still had fuel in the tanks. He climbed aboard and went straight to the controls. The damage was bad, but he had done repairs in worse conditions. He bypassed the broken systems, rerouted power, and manually released the docking clamps. The ship lifted off the hangar floor. The bay doors were sealed, but Jinwoo had a solution for that. He armed his ship's single remaining missile and fired it at the doors. The explosion tore them open. Air rushed out into space, but Jinwoo was already accelerating through the gap. His ship shot out of the warship and into the darkness of space. He flew away at maximum speed, putting distance between himself and the dying vessel. Behind him, the Crimson Talon was nearly empty now. Hundreds of escape pods drifted around it like a swarm of insects. Inside the ship, in the reactor chamber, the crude bomb reached 0 on its timer. The explosion was small, just a little device made from cleaning chemicals. But it was placed perfectly. It ruptured the cooling system. Coolant poured out, mixing with the reactor's heat. The mixture became unstable. The reactor's safety systems tried to compensate, but they couldn't. The temperature kept rising. 10 seconds later, the reactor failed. Not a violent explosion. The containment fields held. But the power went out. Emergency lights flickered on. The great warship, pride of the Velkari fleet, went dark and dead in space. Jinwoo watched from his ship. He saw the lights go out. He saw the escape pods floating in the darkness. Everyone had made it out. Good. He activated his ship's communication system and sent out a signal on human military frequencies. "This is Lieutenant Jinwoo Kim requesting pickup. Position is Frontier Nebula, Sector 47. I have survivors from multiple species who will need medical attention. Repeat, requesting pickup." The answer came 3 days later. A human warship called Indomitable Spirit arrived at his coordinates. It collected Jinwoo's ship and rounded up the escape pods. The human prisoners were treated for injuries and malnutrition. The other alien prisoners were given food, water, and medical care before being handed over to their respective governments. Captain Minho Park met Jinwoo in the hangar bay. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. He looked at Jinwoo's ship, held together with emergency repairs, and shook his head. "You have a talent for getting into trouble," Minho said. "They captured me," Jinwoo replied. "I just got out, by destroying an entire warship. You know they're going to promote you again." "I was trying to retire," Minho laughed. "You're 32 years old. Nobody retires at 32. I've been fighting for 10 years. That's enough." "Maybe. But the galaxy doesn't seem to want to let you rest." They walked together toward the medical bay. Jinwoo needed to be checked for injuries and exposure. On the way, they passed through the ship's common area. Hana was there, eating real food for the first time in months. She looked up and saw Jinwoo. She stood quickly and bowed. "Thank you," she said. "You saved us all." "I just gave you a chance to save yourselves," Jinwoo said. "You took it. That's what matters." 3 weeks later, news of the incident reached the Velkari homeworld. High Command convened an emergency meeting. They had lost their flagship. They had lost the prisoners. They had lost all the intelligence those prisoners could have provided. All because they captured one human. "We cannot win this war," said Supreme Commander Vashatar. He was the oldest Velkari in the room, covered in battle scars. "Not if every human can do what this one did." "He's not like other humans," someone argued. "He's special." "The Reaper." "No," said Vashtar. "I've read the reports. I've studied his tactics. There's nothing he did that other humans couldn't do. He just had the training and the will to never give up. And if humans can train more soldiers like him, we will lose this war completely." The debate lasted 3 days. Finally, they voted. The Velkari Empire would seek peace with humanity. Better to negotiate while they still had strength than to wait until the Reaper and soldiers like him destroyed everything. The peace talks happened on a neutral station. The Velkari sent their best diplomats. The humans sent Ambassador Sora Choi, a sharp woman with white hair and sharper eyes. The Velkari had one condition for peace. The soldier you call Jinwoo Kim must never be deployed against us again. Sora smiled. That's acceptable. Lieutenant Kim has requested retirement anyway, but I should tell you something. He's not special. He's just what happens when you push a human too far. We've been training thousands of soldiers in his methods. Guerrilla warfare. Improvised weapons. Never surrendering. They're learning to fight the way he fights. The Velkari representatives looked at each other with fear in their eyes. Thousands of Reapers. The thought was terrifying. Then we have even more reason to make this peace last, Vashatar said. The treaty was signed.